A blind person might be able to see SCP-1471. This app being so visual, you'd think it'd be impossible. But let's see what can happen when our user is blind. A blind person might have one of the strangest experiences with this thing. They're going to have to manifest the entity first though, which is easier said than done. It's highly going to be likely that somebody who's completely blind is going to lose interest in this app, not understanding what it's doing. However, it is still possible for them to actually interact with it. As the app sends them photos, it is entirely possible for a blind person to still interact and view them. How? Well, they can use Be My Eyes to actually have the AI describe what is in the photo. This comes with a caveat though. It's possible that 1471 is going to be completely undetectable by the AI. The reason isn't because of the fact that it's an entity that shouldn't be there, but rather simply because the AI can't always detect finer details. This means over time, as 1471 becomes more prominent in the images, the AI will start to describe it. Someone who's blind could potentially become more curious to see where this dog-like creature is going to end up. So now they've viewed it enough to make it manifest. What happens? There's two possibilities. A, they're not going to be able to see it at all and thus will not be able to interact with it. Or B, due to 1471 working like a hallucination and kind of bypassing physics, it might be completely visible despite blindness. Since it's now visible, this means someone who's completely blind could potentially interact with it as if they're sighted. As terrifying as it is to have only 1471 in your field of view, it could be a very interesting companion for someone who's blind. This is because, in theory, if it truly works like a companion, this means over time it could potentially become like the world's strangest guide dog. And speaking of guide dogs, if somebody were to have a guide dog in this situation, I do believe that the animal would not react, as, well, 1471 can only be perceived by whoever it was that used the app. No one else can see it. The cane is not going to be able to find this thing either. Using your phone with Be My Eyes or Seeing AI possibly won't be able to see it. That one is hard to tell. Legally blind is going to be very mixed in terms of what happens. They can actually see the photos relatively well despite vision being blurry, although it is still very likely they'd be using Be My Eyes to have it described. But they are going to be more likely to interact with said photos. Not to mention, they are definitely going to notice 1471 when it becomes more prominent in the images. With 1471 being a black silhouette with the white skull of a dog for its head, well, that adds very high contrast. Once this thing manifests, that's where it does get interesting yet again. Because even if you need some sort of perception to see it, someone who's blind is still going to be able to spot it, whether it's blurry or not blurry. If it does turn out to be completely visible, then, well, over time, just like with the blind person, could potentially become like a guide dog if it chooses to be. And someone who's legally blind would actually have an easier time with this, as they do have some blurry vision to work with, and thus could be guided in the correct direction much, much easier. Though it is going to look very strange when everything else looks like the Nintendo 64, but Malo looks realistic. Someone of low vision might be the least at risk here. Although they are at the disadvantage of most likely being the quickest to cause Malo to manifest, they are definitely going to be the least likely to lose their minds when 1471 does manifest. Someone of low vision could potentially be able to actually look at the images, and because they can see it, they're going to be more likely to be more interested and engaged into the images, which is what causes 1471 to show up quicker in their line of sight. However, their advantage over someone who's legally blind, and especially someone who's completely blind, is the fact that they can see a little bit more than just 1471. Someone who's completely blind does have the potential to cause 1471 to interact with them differently, and with it being the only thing they can see, they might lose their mind because of it. Compared to somebody of low vision having a bit more in their sight, 1471 might stick to its regular rules of being seen in reflections or at the edge of the vision. Overall, this is what could potentially happen if a blind person were to encounter SCP-1471, or Malo. There are some risks, but there are also some strange rewards that come from this one. But what do you think would happen? Did I get anything right? Wrong? You let me know. As usual, if there's a particular scenario you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring the possibility of a blind person in horror, then subscribe, because there's more to come. I also write my own creepypastas for those of you who are interested in storytelling.